Hey, so let's get rolling. We're in week 12. It's kind of weird. It's been 3 months already, but it is already December. So I think we started in September. So here we are. We got a couple more weeks. Let me just tell you a little change in the calendar. We're going to do 3 weeks in a row right now. I had originally identified 2 weeks, but we're going to go week 12 today, 13 and 14. And then we're going to take 2 weeks off for the Christmas holidays. So we are going those 3 weeks starting tonight. So be ready for that. And okay, so 3 weeks tonight, next week, following week, and then a break. Okay? All right, so that's just so you know that. And we'll be doing, I'm not exactly sure what I'm filling that time. Some of it will be the book. We might be looking at the other kind of topic we've been talking about is worldview, some of the other religions, as well as big question of apologetics. And so we might be doing a smattering of some of those. But today we're in chapter 4 of our book. And again, I want you to just kind of relate once again to the question. Nope. I want you to relate once again to the kind of the title of the book. The whole point of the book is that we have a worldview as Christians, and it is appropriate and necessary, I would say, for us to tackle, to address, to get after all of the big questions of life that humans have thought of for thousands of years. I would submit that every world religion, every world philosophy has to address the big questions, and we do, all right? Now, that's not to say that we can close the concern or the understanding to the point where I totally get it. You've proven things to me. Maybe in some situations we can do that, but in other things we can't. And that is the location where faith must enter in. I have enough evidence for me now to engage my faith, my belief into what's being declared. The challenge of our book is, the joy of our book, though, is to say that I don't have enough faith to believe other worldviews, or typically to state it as an atheist, because their answers don't come close enough. You really got to have faith there. And we're going to I bring that up again today because we're really going to see that in the presentations that you're going to have today. And I don't know if you've read ahead into chapter 4. You're encouraged to do so. You're free to do so. But we're going to look at 2 videos. I've included one in the worksheet that I sent to those of you who study at home. But I've added a second one, and you're going to see what that is as we get to it. But feel free, Steve, you got that ready? So we're going to watch this first one. It is titled Intelligent Design Collection Trailer. It's a trailer for a much longer presentation. But again, this is going to be about 5 minutes in length. You can take notes if you like, if whatever your preference is. But again, just engage with the material. And Steve, I'm ready if you are.
The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at the bottom, no design, no purpose, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference.
I don't know, I'm pretty satisfied with the explanation of the evolutionists.
Yes, I do believe we are descended from animals.
Evolution is obvious.
Man was not created in God's image. God was created in man's image in order to address those things about which we were ignorant.
I think part of the grand joke of it all is that, before there was feet, there was flippers. Before there was lungs, there was gills. And, it's all part of that process that got us where we are today, gridlocked and angry.
I sometimes wonder why anybody talks about anything else, because this is the most interesting topic there is. Where do we come from? How did we get here? What brought us into existence? What is our relationship to reality as a whole?
You look at the incredible diversity and complexity of life, and inevitably the question arises, what brought all this into existence? Was it simply chance and necessity, undirected natural forces? Or is there something else going on? Is there a purpose, a plan, a design due to an intelligent cause?
It's really interesting to notice that the more we know about life and the more we know about biology, the more problems Darwinism has and the more design becomes apparent.
We have not the slightest chance of a chemical evolutionary origin for even the simplest of cells.
The discovery of the information-bearing properties of DNA and RNA is a fundamental challenge to all materialistic theories of the origin of life. Neo-Darwinism and its associated theories of chemical evolution and the like will not be able to survive the biology of the information age, the biology of the 21st century.
When I look at the evidence objectively, without ruling out the possibility of design, design just leaps up as the most likely explanation. And that's why I believe that it's true.
We can't explain these systems by natural law. And if we're searching for truth, and they are in fact designed, if we have to be design engineers to understand them, then I say, what's the problem? You know, you go where the data leads you. And the implications, yeah, they have profound metaphysical implications, but so be it.
For several centuries, we've been told that the universe does not have us in mind. That is, that we exist in a small speck of dust in a very large universe, and that the universe was not designed for beings like us. Our argument suggests something completely different. It suggests that the universe was intended, that the universe exists for a purpose.
The laws of physics are balanced on a razor's edge for life to occur. What you have is a universe that is not only finely tuned for life to occur, but also has a beautiful, elegant mathematical structure, and a structure such that we can discover that structure.
There's something about the universe that can't be simply explained just by the impersonal forces of nature and atoms colliding with atoms. And so you have to reach for something beyond the universe to try to account for it.
The founders of modern science, like Copernicus and Kepler and Galileo and Newton himself, believed that the universe was the product of a mind, that it was intelligible to beings like ourselves because the universe itself was the product of an intelligent being.
I was trained in journalism and law to respond to truth. I had to take a step of faith in the same direction that evidence is flowing. You don't have to commit intellectual suicide to come to the conclusion that there is an intelligent designer. Because today, science is pointing more directly and more powerfully toward a creator than any other time in the history of the world.
Check, check. Can you hear me? Gotcha? Okay. Let me just cover a couple of things. I've written some things on the board while we all were watching that as well. Again, just to go through some things here. That word, that's not for you, but remember what we've talked about early on is that in our current time period of human history, as believers, we are super blessed because there has been a renaissance of apologetics and thinking and argumentation geared toward the validation of our faith, of our worldview. Tremendous, okay, in the last 100 years to use science, but especially in the last generation, 40 years, many of those individuals that you just saw in that trailer, they are the giants of this particular field. Now, I'm going to show you something here. All of those men, mostly, I think they're all men, of those individuals, they are not all believers in Jesus. Let me show you something on the board. What they are suggesting and talking about is what's called the teleological argument. Teleological. And again, the question that they're addressing is, as was said in the video there, where did we come from? That is a fair question that every worldview should take a stab at, should try to give a coherent answer. So origins was the question. And so the teleological argument is an attempt to address that, okay? And again, we would use the teleological argument to say there is a God. Where did it all come from? Well, let me go through the information, and the conclusion will be that there's a God. Now, this has also been identified, the teleological argument. It is also known as, AKA, intelligent design. Now, let me tell you just one little fact about intelligent design. It is not necessarily a theistic field of study. That's why I put here, they would say an intelligent design implies a designer, but not all intelligent design followers or proponents are also theists. Many of them are still at the point of saying, we don't know who or what the designer is, but we're just claiming that there's a designer. Now, when intelligent design was kind of coming into vogue about 20, maybe even, I don't know, have I lost track of time, 25 years ago, there was a huge push within our culture, within the society, because there were those who do not agree with this conclusion, who were saying, what you are trying to do is get God into society and God into the classroom. And it's a backdoor way of we're not teaching creationism, but we're teaching intelligent design. Well, you're just creationists. Now, I'm saying some intelligent designers are theists, but not all of them. There are those who are still, I don't know. I'm telling you there is one. I just don't know what it is, okay? So be aware of that. As you consider this. Again, intelligent design, if there is one, the concern, and we just heard it again here on the video, is that if this is true, there are metaphysical implications. Meta meaning beyond, all right? Other than physical implications. And the materialist, the strict naturalist, he cannot allow that to come into the equation, into the cooking pot, all right? It can't be there, because that would mean that there's something beyond atoms, beyond rocks, okay? Beyond nature. They're not willing to grant that. I am. I mean, I already have my worldview figured out, right? I believe in God. That's the designer behind all of this. I am a theist, okay? But some are not able to get there. Now, another phrase that they use right there, let me show it to you here. I love this. I've been using it of late in some of my discussions in my classroom as well. This whole idea of follow the science. It is oftentimes said that, oh, you Christians, you don't follow the science. It's all faith, faith, faith. And I'm going, listen, we follow the science. In fact, because of the renaissance of science that is put forth by those individuals and many others in this whole teleological argument, this is science-based. That's the only thing it's based on. This is not philosophical. This is not metaphysical in its orientation. This is, what does the science say? What is the data? And we have found out a whole lot of things. And that's why I'm pleased to say, yeah, let's follow the science. What are you going to do with all the information that comes forth from the teleological argument? Okay? So that's kind of, again, get you to think about this. Again, the teleological argument, we would continue it by saying the teleological argument for God's existence. Does God exist? Have you considered the teleological argument? Last week, we were talking about the cosmological argument, okay? So with that in mind, there's a second video that I'd like for you to watch. It is 6 minutes in length, all right, thereabouts. And if we're ready for that, Steve, we can just run with that one as well. Thank you.
From galaxies and stars, down to atoms and subatomic particles, the very structure of our universe is determined by these numbers. These are the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe. Scientists have come to the shocking realization that each of these numbers has been carefully dialed to an astonishingly precise value a value that falls within an exceedingly narrow, life-permitting range. If any one of these numbers were altered by even a hair's breadth, no physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere. There'd be no stars, no life, no planets, no chemistry. Consider gravity, for example. The force of gravity is determined by the gravitational constant. If this constant varied by just 1 in 10 to the 60th parts, none of us would exist. To understand how exceedingly narrow this life-permitting range is, imagine a dial divided into 10 to the 60th increments. To get a handle on how many tiny points on the dial this is, compare it to the number of cells in your body, or the number of seconds that have ticked by since time began. If the gravitational constant had been out of tune by just one of these infinitesimally small increments, the universe would either have expanded and thinned out so rapidly that no stars could form and life couldn't exist, or it would have collapsed back on itself with the same result: no stars, no planets, and no life. Or consider the expansion rate of the universe. This is driven by the cosmological constant. A change in its value by a mere 1 part in 10 to the 120th parts would cause the universe to expand too rapidly or too slowly. In either case, the universe would again be life-prohibiting. Or another example of fine-tuning. If the mass and energy of the early universe were not evenly distributed to an incomprehensible precision of 1 part in 10 to the 123rd, the universe would be hostile to life of any kind. The fact is, our universe permits physical, interactive life only because these, and many other numbers, have been independently and exquisitely balanced on a razor's edge. Wherever physicists look, they see examples of fine-tuning. The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. If anyone claims not to be surprised by the special features that the universe has, he's hiding his head in the sand. These special features are surprising and unlikely. What is the best explanation for this astounding phenomenon? There are 3 live options. The fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Which of these options is the most plausible? According to this alternative, the universe must be life-permitting. The precise values of these constants and quantities could not be otherwise. But is this plausible? Is a life-prohibiting universe impossible? Far from it. It's not only possible, it's far more likely than a life-permitting universe. The constants and quantities are not determined by the laws of nature. There's no reason or evidence to suggest that fine-tuning is necessary. How about chance? Did we just get really lucky? No. The probabilities involved are so ridiculously remote as to put the fine-tuning well beyond the reach of chance. So, in an effort to keep this option alive, some have gone beyond empirical science and opted for a more speculative approach, known as the multiverse. They imagine a universe generator that cranks out such a vast number of universes that, odds are, life-permitting universes will eventually pop out. However, there's no scientific evidence for the existence of this multiverse. It cannot be detected, observed, measured, or proved. And the universe generator itself would require an enormous amount of fine-tuning. Furthermore, small patches of order are far more probable than big ones. So the most probable observable universe would be a small one, inhabited by a single, simple observer. But what we actually observe is the very thing that we should least expect: a vast, spectacularly complex, highly ordered universe, inhabited by billions of other observers. So even if the multiverse existed, which is a moot point, it wouldn't do anything to explain the fine-tuning. Given the implausibility of physical necessity or chance, the best explanation for why the universe is fine-tuned for life may very well be it was designed that way. A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a superintellect monkeyed with physics, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. There is for me powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge.
Can you hear me? We good? Okay, so what I appreciated about that second video, a lot of good stuff in there. Again, presenting design and how did it all come about. Again, I wrote the question, how did the universe become as it is? We can make observations. We can do mathematical calculations about this and that, and we know about gravity, and we know about chemicals and all kinds of scientific data. We have all that information, and the question then can be asked, well, how did it get this way? And I appreciate, again, Christianity's explanatory power. What the Bible gives us and what we then do with the creation that God has provided for us, we have answers, all right? It has an explanatory power to it. There would be those who, again, say there's a designer, but they don't like where that would take them. What is the designer? And so they remain, to use the term, I'll just put the word agnostic. They remain agnostic about the conclusion. But again, we don't have to be that. Again, we can use this as one argument in an array of understanding that we have and just boldly say, I believe that God is it. Well, where did God come from? Again, that was last week, right? He's the uncaused cause. He is outside of all of this. Well, I can't believe that. Okay, that's fine. But what is your answer? And that's why they even showed it again here today, this multiverse. Well, there's the multiverse. Okay, you can go with that one, but you can't observe it. There's no evidence for it. I mean, you don't have the explanatory power that my faith in God allows me to have. Okay? So again, just some notes that come from that. So with that in mind, we're going to take just a bit of time. You have your worksheet there. Maybe you took some notes on those ideas. But let's take a look at the points as made. I'm starting on page 95 in chapter 4. This one is titled Divine Design. If you want to write teleological argument there somewhere, that's fine as well. All right. I'd like to read the opening little quotation there. Only a rookie who knows nothing about science would say science takes away from faith. If you really study science, it will bring you closer to God. And again, I like it. Follow the science. Our authors are going to suggest it will lead us to God himself, which is great. That's the point. All right. So I know some of you have read this, and again, those two videos did a great job. It's almost what we're now going to cover in our chapters is a bit of review, but at least it helps us to understand it rather easily, okay? So the first thing I'm asking there next on the worksheet is identify the teleological argument for God's existence. Last week was the cosmological, today the teleological. And again, it also has its three statements. It's two premises and then a conclusion. And that's written there for us right here on the first page. Number one, every design had a designer. Is that a fair statement to make? Does that make sense? Does design imply designer? Or does design imply, or is it more logical? It's just random. It just happened that way. Again, you can hold to that, but it's a fair statement to say that design had a designer. Then it goes on, the universe has highly complex design, incredibly detailed, sophisticated. The balancing point, you saw that one little rendering of an egg on a fork, on a matchstick, on a razor blade, on a string. I mean, the balance, the factors that are at play. And again, not just one factor, but all of them have to be lined up. Okay, so again, very complex, and therefore the conclusion is fair to say that the universe had a designer. Now, again, that doesn't have to be believed. You don't have to buy into that as a worldview. But if you deny that, those two premises and that particular conclusion, then what do you have? What is a better explanation? Because again, the thought would be, aren't we wanting to go with the best explanatory answer as opposed to a lesser one? So that's on each of us to kind of decide for ourselves, how much faith are we willing to exhibit, okay? So that's identify that. Identify anthropic constants, okay? This is kind of brought forth, starting on page 96. They use the example of the famous Apollo 13 almost tragedy that occurred. Something went wrong, and all the things that they had to balance and figure out and get lined up so that they could make it back into our atmosphere and be reunited to the earth, so to speak. They had a problem, and they identified, and through our authors here are going to present 5 anthropic problems or anthropic constants that were a challenge for them. So what is an anthropic constant? I'm finding the answer to that on page 96, okay? And the second full paragraph on 96, toward the top, it says, these highly precise and interdependent environmental conditions are called anthropic constants, make up what is known as the anthropic principle. Okay, so that's where the answer is. Let me just give you the straight thing if you're taking notes on this. What are anthropic constants? Precise and interdependent conditions that must exist together. Precise. Each one is a little bit in this area, in this area, in this area, but they are very fine-tuned. That's what we mean by precise. They are precise and interdependent conditions that must exist together. Anthropic constants. What that means is, just for your thinking on that, is even if you had 50 of these and 49 of them are perfectly working, if the 50th does not line up, the whole thing falls. You don't have any life. As they mentioned on one of those videos, you have no planets, you don't have anything unless all of them are lined up. They are interdependent, not independent, interdependent, right? Without one, you have nothing. Now, again, I used 50. What we're going to see here with the Apollo 13, they identified 5 that they're going to talk about, but there were another 10 that they at least list on a page or two later, okay? So explain the anthropic principle. That would say this: the fine-tuning of the earth is necessary to produce and support life. The anthropic principle states fine-tuning of the earth, using again those anthropic constants, but the fine-tuning of the earth is necessary to produce and support life. For it to come about in the first place and then sustain it for any length of time, that's the anthropic principle. Okay? And again, then on page 96, again, they go into the idea of, if you've seen the movie or if you know the story as well, you just know that, again, they've got a problem, okay? And things were going well, but then things didn't go well. Something happened, a short in a fuel cell or in a switch, and it caused a spark, which caused an explosion, and now they're out in space. How are they going to make it back? Just setting that up for them. If you'll identify on page 98, the paragraph that begins, that gas is later confirmed to be oxygen. Although the crew doesn't know this yet, oxygen tank 2 has just exploded and damaged oxygen tank number 1 in the process. Lovell, one of the astronauts, can't see the damage, just the venting gas. So here you have an anthropic constant number 1 that they had to deal with, and that is oxygen level. And again, it's a problem for them, but again, they're drawing the parallel here. This is an issue for all of life. If oxygen, relative to life and carbon dioxide and the other aspects that are part of that, if they don't line up, you're going to not have, life cannot be not only produced, but not supported either. And they go on. You can read about that. So that's the first one of the 5 anthropic constants, is the oxygen level that they now need to deal with. They need that. The next one on the bottom of the next page says, and number 2, atmospheric transparency. I'm not going to take the time to read through those things. You can write these down on your own if you like. The third one on page 100 is the moon-Earth gravitational interaction. Oh, so that's involved also? Yes, it is. Number 4, 101, the carbon dioxide level. Again, the anti-oxygen, the carbon dioxide. And then page 102 is the constant aspect relative to gravity itself and how what factor that plays. So they go through all of that. Let me read the gravity one. They kind of mentioned it, I think, on one of the videos, but let's just read a little bit here on the gravity, just to get the gravity, get it, of the issue. The gravity that is pulling the astronauts back home is still another anthropic constant. Its strength may be terrifying, but it couldn't be any different for life to exist here on Earth. If the gravitational force were altered by, that's quite a number, percent, our sun would not exist, and therefore neither would we. Talk about precision. As the astronauts plummet to Earth in their crippled spacecraft, no one is certain if they will survive the violent and intensely hot re-entry. Too many questions remain unanswered. Is the heat shield fully intact? Is the ship really on the right entry angle? Will the entry batteries on the CM work? Will the parachutes deploy properly? To make matters worse, there's a typhoon warning in the recovery area. In light of all the uncertainty, the astronauts pay their respects to the ground crew just prior to the 3-minute radio blackout that accompanies reentry. And as you know, the wonderful story, yes, they make it, all right? And so, again, splashdown occurs. I'm on page 104. So the anthropic principle, again, the design is in the details, is the conclusion that they're hoping for us to draw from all of this, is that these are some finely tuned necessities that allow for life and then also sustain it. Okay? Let's take a moment here again to just kind of glance through the text itself. He goes on to talk about the anthropic principle. On page 105, at the top of the page, let's read that paragraph. Page 105, it says, the extent of the universe's fine-tuning makes the anthropic principle perhaps the most powerful argument for the existence of God. Now again, that maybe it is. Cosmological is pretty impressive. The moral argument, you can make a case. The ontological argument, so there are several arguments, but this is rather impressive, this fine-tuning concept. It's not that there are just a few broadly defined constants that may have resulted by chance. No, there are more than 100 very narrowly defined constants that strongly point to an intelligent designer. We've already identified 5 of them. Here are 10 more. And again, they're finding more and more of these. There's a movie or a documentary that I'm familiar with, and 2 of its authors were in our second video. And they have a presentation titled The Privileged Planet. And it is all of this stuff. It's exactly what we're talking about. And they, at the time when that was presented, they said that they were working on upwards of 30 different anthropic principles, these constants that have to be enforced. By the time this is being written, now they've found more and more and more. They're over 100 now. What will be true 10 years from now? Will there continue to be more and more of these that make this, the evidence and the implications, all of this, more and more telling to the designer issue? It's possible. And you can read those 10 as you like. They're pretty significant. All right, a lot of them just for the life to start and then also to be continued. Okay, let's read on page 106 this individual named Hugh Ross. Hugh Ross is an astrophysicist. He's a smart guy. He actually lives in Southern California. He's a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. He would be, he is identified as, I know we talked about this a little bit last week, this idea of a young earth versus old earth. He is an old earth believer in Jesus Christ. That's his where he's coming from. And as a scientist, he has spent his life on this. He has an apologetics website. You can type Hugh Ross and find his. I'm trying to remember its exact title. I think reasons to believe. I think that might be it. But anyway, he says this: astrophysicist Hugh Ross has calculated the probability that these and other constants, and now they've got 122, would exist today for any planet in the universe by chance. Now, you remember on the video, they showed that there's three options, okay, that as to how this came out, chance being one of them. Well, assuming there are 10, 22 to the 22nd planets in the universe, a very large number, one with 22 zeros following it, his answer is shocking. One chance in 10 to the 138. That's one chance in one with 138 zeros after it. There are only 10 to the 70th atoms in the entire universe. In effect, there is zero chance that any planet in the universe would have the life-supporting conditions we have unless there is an intelligent designer behind it all. The intelligent designer, again, theism implies a mind, all right? The intelligence to choose and to make, to have understanding and to put all of this together, to engineer all of it, all right? That's what he's saying there. Now, again, if that's the probability, I'm going to say I'm going with the designer. If you say no to that, you're free to do that, then what's your answer? How do you overcome the probability of that? And the multiverse, if you have an infinite number of these, well, then eventually one of them will be the one that is life-supporting, and here we are. Well, that's a nice theory, but who made the machine that made the universe? Where did the machine even come from? I mean, there's some holes in the argument, all right? So again, is God the best explanation? Likely, all right? He goes on and with speaking of Arno Penzias, and then at the next paragraph, cosmologist Ed Harrison, let's read his paragraph, uses the word proof when he considers the implication of the anthropic principle on the question of God. He writes, here is the cosmological proof of the existence of God, the design argument of Paley, updated and refurbished. The fine-tuning of the universe provides prima facie evidence of a deistic design. And therefore, I don't have enough faith to not believe that there is a God and put my eternal destiny into that belief system. Okay? So that's identify Hugh Ross's observation. Again, identify the multiple universe theory. If you want to just write that out, we've talked about it. The video showed that. They're talking about this in again. Well, how do you respond to this? And they speak of the multiverse. That's fine. But there are some problems to the multiverse theory. Let me just, again, give you three of them. I think you understand what the theory is about, okay? Let me just say what I've written down here just by way of review. But that would say the multiple universe says that there's an infinite number of universes, increasing the probability that 10 to the 138th would be met eventually. That's the claim. We can get there. We have just infinite number of universes. Okay, that's fine. That's the theory. What are the problems to the theory? Number one, there's no evidence to support a multi-universe theory. Now, again, that's kind of simply stated because we are only able to observe this universe, the one we're in. We have our galaxy, we have our solar system, we have our galaxy, the Milky Way, and we are now aware, science has told us, that there are not just one galaxy, right, but there are hundreds of thousands of galaxies in our universe. So this is our universe. How would we have any knowledge to identify a second universe? We're not, there's no evidence for this. We're not able to calculate it. Now, I'm not saying, again, let me just play devil's advocate. I'm not saying that there isn't one, but there's no evidence for one. How would we cannot compute to that, all right? So again, it's a step of faith. It's a leap of faith that there is another universe, and not just one, but enough to sometime, maybe they got it right the first chance. Here we are, this universe 10 to the 138th power, and the first one that happened, we're it. We hit it right off the money, right? Or we're down the line. So how many others are out there? That's a consideration. There's no evidence for this, all right? Secondly, it is illogical. Now, this we learned in last chapter, but the idea, it is illogical to have an infinite number of finite universes. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense to have an infinite number of finite universes. Our authors addressed that a little bit when they were talking about the cosmological argument, how some things that doesn't work. And they're using the same reasoning here. It's illogical to have an infinite number of finite universes. And a third answer, the material agent, if you want to say the machine that produces these universes. Well, that too, where did it come from? That's spitting out all these universes. They use that example on the video, okay? Again, because it itself has a probability of 10 to the 138th, right? It's not just there, and even if it is there, where did it come from? Oh, well, there are multiple machine universe providers. Oh, really? Well, where did all of those come from? Well, there are, again, it just falls back into silliness as far as to trying to do that. Why not just say, well, God did it? Again, that does have implications. He may have something to say about you and about your life and what his expectation on it is. And there are ramifications that people say, no, I will not submit to that. And again, it becomes, as we've learned several times, it's a matter of the heart, of the will, not a matter of the mind. The evidence is rather compelling. It becomes a matter of the will. I just choose not to. Okay, I mean, that's the concept of free will, right? And the fourth answer that we can suggest here for the problems to this is, again, anything is possible. I mean, you can throw anything out there. You can make up whatever you want, but not everything is reasonable. Not everything is logical. And so you got a problem here with this multiverse. You can say it. I guess it's possible 10 to the 138th or 10 to the 1038th, whatever, but that doesn't mean it's logical or reasonable, right? Okay, so how vast is our galaxy? Just to, again, put some numbers on this. Let's see, this is on page 108. They begin with a little introduction about President George W. Bush and the challenge of the Columbia being lost in 2003. Tragedy, I know, but and again, his call was, let's not allow this to stop our pursuit into the heavens, let's continue on. And so that was kind of a rallying cry and all of that. So with that in mind, go to the next, at the bottom of the page, our authors say, yet any human journey into space will penetrate only a tiny fraction of it. There are 100 billion stars in our galaxy, Milky Way, and the average distance between those stars is 30 trillion miles. By the way, this distance is another anthropic constant. If the stars were closer together or farther apart, planetary orbits would be affected. So again, the gravitational limitations and how everything is exquisitely engineered is, again, an anthropic constant here about the spacing between the 100 billion stars in our galaxy, not the universe. So again, it goes from there. So how vast is our galaxy? I've written down in my notes 100 billion stars, 100 billion stars with an average separation of 30 trillion miles. That's just an average. You know, they calculated that. Some are only 27 trillion miles apart, I assume. But we're on average. We can just talk in generalities here, okay? So that's how vast it is. But again, now the next question is, well, how vast is the universe? If that's our galaxy, how vast is the universe? Well, they speak to that a little bit. The next paragraph, you can read all this on your own as well, but page 109, the second full paragraph. Now keep in mind, that's just between 2 of the 100 billion stars in our galaxy. How many stars are there in the entire universe? Well, the number of stars in the universe is about equal to the number of sand grains on all the beaches on all the earth. And at 5 miles per second, it will take you over 200,000 years to go from one grain of sand to another. The heavens are awesome. How vast is the universe? Well, again, just try to get your brain around all the sand on the seas, on the beaches of the earth, separated by 200,000 years at traveling 5 miles per second. That's how vast. So again, I'm not sure who calculated that, who counted all the grains of sand on all the beaches, but there you go. And again, that's why, and they also concluded with this, but again, they said, the heavens, the psalmist, David said, the heavens declare the anthropic principles. The heavens declare the teleological argument. The heavens demand, hey, everybody, there's a designer out there. His name is Yahweh. He asks of you to relate to him, to come to him for salvation from your sins. This is what the heavens are declaring. I like that. Flipping over then to page 110. On page 110, we have a kind of a concluding statement, and from my favorite, one of my favorites, C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis in the Screwtape Letters. This Screwtape letter that he's going to reference here is letter number 1 in his book. Let me just, again, set you up. The Screwtape Letters are designed, the thinking is, you have an experienced elder demon, his name is Screwtape, and he's helping a younger, who happens to be his nephew, by the name of Wormwood, how to deal with being a successful tempter, a successful demon relating to humanity, right? And so in the story of all of that, letter number 1 is Screwtape teaching Wormwood about how to deal with these arguments, with thinking, with how do I relate to my human who is engaging with deep thinking and thoughts. And the basic summary that, as you could read it right there, is simply this. We don't want him to think. We don't want him to think about anything, really. We want him to be a mind-numbed blob of cells just going through life. Who knows? I don't know. I don't care. Nothing matters. Nothing's important. I'm just doing life. Screwtape would say to Wormwood, we love it when humans do that. We want them to, and I use the phrase, stay stupid. We don't want them to learn, to engage, because it's true. The heavens declare the glory of God. And if they think deep thoughts about science, about astrophysics, about chemistry, they're going to come up with some ideas, and they may not know how to answer that. And that might further put them into further understandings. And who knows if not over time, they come up with this thing called the intelligent design concept, the teleological argument. We don't want them to get this. We want them to stay stupid, to just go through life without thinking about anything. And that is why he uses the phrase to press upon them the ordinariness of things. Let that be what consumes them. Not the details, not the deep questions of life, not where they come up to something. We want their answer to be, oh, we don't know. We don't think about that. That's a little too deep. We don't concern ourselves with that issue. Again, you can do that, but that's not being fair to the big questions of life. So as far as, the question of origins or the existence of evil or whatever the questions might be, we don't want them to think. They might come to a conclusion that we don't want them to come to, because as we learned in a previous chapter, all truth is God's truth. If they start thinking, they're going to come to God. So again, we want them to stay stupid, to be naive, to just don't think, don't reason, none of that. Again, all of that is God's territory. All right. We want them to be concerned with, I wrote some things down, the big game that's coming up, to be concerned about the sandwich that they're going to make for lunch or for dinner. We want them to be concerned about jet skis. We want them to be concerned about the color of their nail polish. These are the big issues of life. Oh my gosh, how can you do life without having thought through all of these important issues? And again, those are just the ordinary things of life. Some have a greater value than others, yes. But again, to consider the biggest questions, the best questions, is something that should be a part of our mindset as well. Okay? And that's kind of what he's talking about there on C.S. Lewis. Let me read the conclusion that he brings us to on page 112. Actually, let's start it on page 111. Right there at the bottom. Believing without observation is exactly what atheists accuse religious people of doing. But ironically, it's the atheists who are pushing a religion of blind faith. Christians have good reasons. Stop. Be at peace. I hope when you are watching those videos, you're going, oh yes, that makes me feel good about the choice I've made relative to theism. And not only theism, but to Jehovah and to his son, Jesus Christ, and my salvation. I'm feeling good here, right? And again, truth is on our side. That's the argumentation we're making here. It's the atheist, he goes on, Christians have good reasons based on observation for believing what they believe. Atheists don't. That's why we don't have enough faith to be atheists. This blind faith of the atheist reveals that the rejection of a designer is not a head problem. It's not as if we lack evidence or intellectual justification for a designer. On the contrary, the evidence is impressive. What we have here is a will problem. Some people, despite the evidence, simply don't want to admit there's a designer. In fact, one critic of the anthropic principle admitted to the New York Times that his real objection was totally emotional because it smells of religion and intelligent design. So much for scientific objectivity. And again, they're going to get into that in chapter 5 when we get to that. Okay? That's my presentation for you today. If anybody has any questions, if I can help anything or clarify anything, I'll give it my best effort on that. Does anybody either at home or here in the sanctuary have a question, comment? Okay, then let's conclude with a word of prayer. If you join me, that'd be great. Let's pray, shall we? Father in heaven, we are grateful for the minds that you have given to us. We thank you especially for the minds you've given to some of these great thinkers, these scientists and philosophers who have been able to put together some information and some theories and some ideas that really give us peace and confidence in the faith that we profess. Thank you for their work. Thank you for, again, our authors and putting this together for us. Thank you for even the technology that allows us to communicate so well this evening. So we thank you for our blessings. May you receive all praise, glory, and honor. And may the heavens continue to declare the glory of the Lord. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.